Have you ever met someone who always plays the victim, yet somehow everyone walks on eggshells around them? You know the type, soft-spoken, fragile, endlessly misunderstood. The one who sighs and says, "I'm fine," but their silence fills the entire room with tension. It's strange, isn't it? The person who seems the weakest somehow controls the strongest. The fragile ones who never raise their voice are the same ones pulling every invisible string. They make you question your words before you speak. They make you feel guilty for being okay when they're not. And without noticing it, your world starts to orbit around their moods, their fears, their subtle disapproval. But what if I told you, insecurity is one of the most powerful forms of control? Not the kind that demands obedience, but the kind that seeps into your conscience, that whispers, "You're responsible for my feelings." And before you know it, you begin to shrink yourself just to keep the peace. In this video, we're going to expose the quiet psychology behind emotional control, how the most insecure people manipulate energy, attention, and guilt without even realizing it. But more importantly, we'll look at why we let them, and how we can finally break free from that invisible leash. So stay until the very end. Because once you understand what's really happening underneath those soft apologies and nervous smiles, you'll never see fragility the same way again. If you find meaning in videos that awaken the mind and reveal the hidden layers of human behavior, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know when I release the next piece designed to challenge your thoughts and expand your soul. Insecurity doesn't always look like trembling hands or anxious words. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it hides behind politeness. Sometimes it wears the mask of kindness so convincingly that you don't realize it is running the entire show. At its core, insecurity is a fear of uncertainty, a terror of losing control over how the world perceives you. And when the human mind cannot control its own chaos, it starts trying to control everything and everyone around it. This is where the transformation begins. The insecure person doesn't seek control out of arrogance or domination. They do it out of fear. They're terrified of being rejected, abandoned, misunderstood. So they create invisible systems of emotional management, guilt, silence, withdrawal, manipulation disguised as fragility. They learn that tears can be more powerful than words, that a sigh can stop an argument faster than logic ever could. They don't dominate with anger, they dominate with fear of rejection. You've probably seen it before. A partner who shuts down instead of arguing, leaving you desperate to fix what you didn't break. A coworker who constantly doubts themselves, yet somehow ends up dictating the mood of the entire office. A friend who plays the "I just feel like you don't care anymore" card every time you try to set a boundary. These people don't need to shout. Their power lies in emotional gravity. They pull others into their orbit, and they do it without lifting a finger. But what's more fascinating, and perhaps more disturbing, is that they're rarely aware of it. Their control isn't calculated, it's instinctive. Their manipulation isn't malicious, it's protective. Because for the insecure person, control equals safety. If they can control how others see them, they can avoid rejection. If they can control how others feel, they can escape pain. If they can control the narrative, they can stay hidden behind it. And so, they become masters of subtle influence, crafting guilt, sowing confusion, creating dependency. They withdraw affection when they feel unseen. They apologize excessively until you rush to comfort them. They act helpless until you step in to rescue them. And just like that, the balance of power shifts. Every gesture, every silence, every sigh becomes part of an unconscious choreography, one designed not to dominate, but to survive. And the closer you are to them, the deeper you get pulled into that dance. But there's a darker side to this dance. Because when someone controls through insecurity, they're not only shaping the world outside, they're reinforcing the prison inside. Every successful act of control convinces them that vulnerability equals danger. that authenticity will cost them love, that safety only exists in manipulation. It's a tragic cycle. The more they fear rejection, the more control they exert. The more control they exert, the more disconnected they become. And the more disconnected they become, the lonelier they feel, which only feeds the very insecurity that started it all. Maybe you've been on the receiving end of this dynamic. Or maybe, without realizing it, you've played the role yourself. Because we all carry shades of this pattern. Moments when we use guilt, silence, or self-pity to get what words cannot. So the question isn't whether we manipulate, but why? Why do we need others to feel our pain in order to validate it? Why do we believe love must be managed, emotions must be controlled, and truth must be softened? Perhaps the real enemy isn't insecurity itself, but our fear of being seen as insecure. The moment we start hiding our wounds, we begin controlling others to protect them. And that's when connection turns into control, and love turns into leverage. If you've ever felt this, on either side of that emotional equation, know this: awareness is the first crack in the armor. Because once you see the pattern, you can no longer be ruled by it. Tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed someone controlling through their fragility? Or maybe you've caught yourself doing it without meaning to. Share your story. I read every comment, and your honesty might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you repress doesn't disappear. It controls you." That single sentence contains the entire tragedy of the insecure mind. We like to think control is a choice, something we consciously decide to use on others. But Jung saw it differently. He understood that the things we hide, our fears, our shame, our unhealed pain, don't vanish when buried. They turn into invisible puppeteers, pulling the strings of our behavior. And that's the secret behind insecurity. It's not a weakness. It's the unconscious trying to feel safe. When you look closely at someone who constantly needs reassurance, who molds themselves to please everyone, who panics at the thought of being disliked, you're not looking at manipulation. You're looking at survival. Because somewhere in their story, love became conditional, acceptance became performance, and control, emotional, subtle, obsessive, became the only way to avoid being hurt again. Jung called this hidden battlefield the shadow, the dark, rejected side of the psyche that contains everything we refuse to see. Our anger, our envy, our loneliness, our need to dominate. The insecure person lives in constant war with this shadow. They fear it, deny it, repress it, yet it drives every move they make. The more they try to be good, the more power the shadow gains, because what you suppress does not weaken, it waits. And when the time comes, it emerges, not as darkness, but as control, as guilt, as quiet emotional manipulation. Sigmund Freud called this dynamic the illusion of control. He believed the anxious mind invents rituals, mental or emotional, to create a false sense of stability. Control, to Freud, was never about dominance. It was about defense, a desperate attempt to keep chaos at bay. Think of it this way: the insecure person isn't trying to rule others. They're trying to rule their fear. When they withdraw, when they guilt, when they obsess, they're not plotting. They're protecting themselves from an emotional collapse. Freud saw anxiety as the psyche's alarm system, warning us of internal danger. But instead of facing that danger, we externalize it. We make it about other people. It's easier to manage them than to confront us. So the insecure person projects. They project their inner instability onto others, seeking control outside because they've lost it inside. They become, in Jung's words, possessed by what they deny, enslaved by their shadow while believing they read just being careful, loving, or sensitive. The tragedy is that society rewards this illusion. We applaud politeness, self-sacrifice, empathy, but rarely question when those virtues become masks for fear. An insecure person who always says yes is praised as generous. One who never complains is seen as strong. And slowly, fear becomes virtue. until they no longer know who they are without the performance. Jung believed that true freedom begins where repression ends. To stop controlling others, you must first face the chaos within. That's why he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Fate isn't written in the stars. It's written in the wounds we refuse to look at. So ask yourself, what part of you have you been trying to control? What emotion feels too dangerous to feel, too shameful to reveal? Because that's the very place your shadow lives. And here lies the paradox. When you embrace your insecurity, when you name it, hold it, understand it, it loses its power to control others through you. Awareness transforms fear into understanding. Understanding transforms control into connection. Maybe you were taught that being in control means being strong. But the truth is far more beautiful and far more terrifying. Real strength is surrender. It's letting go of the need to be understood, to be right, to be safe in every moment. It's allowing life and people to be unpredictable. Because only then can the shadow rest. Only then does the insecure mind stop fighting ghosts and start seeing reality. And when that happens, control no longer feels necessary. It feels irrelevant. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever recognized your own shadow, that part of you that controls when you're afraid? Share your reflections in the comments below. I read every one of them, and your insight might be the mirror someone else needs to see themselves. Look around. We live in a time where silence feels suspicious, where distance is mistaken for indifference, and where validation is the new oxygen. Everyone talks, reacts, posts, replies, terrified of disappearing into the noise. Insecurity isn't hiding anymore. It's trending. Modern psychology calls it codependency, emotional hypervigilance, and overcommunication. But at its root, it's the same ancient fear Jung and Freud warned about, the fear of being unseen. Only now, it's been industrialized. We no longer control just our small circle of friends or family. We try to control perception itself. Every story, every post, every filtered image is an act of control, a negotiation for emotional safety. We pretend it's self-expression, but it's self-preservation. Because if we can control how others see us, maybe we won't have to feel how we really are. Think about it. When someone doesn't text back, what happens? You start to create stories. Did I say something wrong? Did I do something? Are they mad at me? That's insecurity talking. The need to fill the silence, to close the gap, to regain control of uncertainty. And in relationships, this has become the new language of love. People no longer say, "I miss you." They say, "Why didn't you reply?" We mistake anxiety for connection, obsession for care, and control for commitment. We live in an emotional economy where attention is currency, and the insecure are the best investors. They know exactly how to withhold it, when to give it, and how to use silence as punishment and affection as reward. They ghost to create longing, withdraw to feel powerful, and apologize just enough to reset the game. We live in an age, as one modern psychologist put it, where emotional control is disguised as emotional intelligence. People call it boundaries, self-care, mindfulness. But often, it's fear wearing a self-help mask. We don't want peace. We want control over peace. And the digital world feeds this illusion. Social media amplifies insecurity the way an echo amplifies sound. Every like, every view, every notification becomes a microdose of validation. And soon we're addicted, not to connection, but to control. Because control gives the illusion of worth. It tells us, I matter because people notice me. I'm safe because I'm seen. But the more we chase visibility, the more invisible we become. You can feel it when scrolling at midnight. The quiet hollowness behind the dopamine hits. It's not fulfillment. It's the echo of 1,000 insecurities bouncing off digital walls. The insecure person has simply evolved. They no longer dominate conversations in person. They dominate algorithms online. They don't need to guilt you with words anymore. They just disappear, and their absence does the talking. They don't need to cry for attention. A single cryptic post is enough to make everyone reach out. It's subtle, but it's everywhere. Influencers preach authenticity while hiding behind filters. Friends who post about letting go while tracking every like. Couples who perform happiness because they're terrified of facing what's real behind the screen. We have mistaken performative vulnerability for truth, and it's killing intimacy. We share everything but reveal nothing. We open up to the world but close off to ourselves. Carl Jung would call this the new persona, the digital mask we wear to survive the collective gaze. It's designed not to express who we are, but to hide what we fear: irrelevance, rejection, imperfection. And the more polished the mask becomes, the emptier the person beneath it feels. You can see it in people's eyes, the exhaustion of constant self-management. Every post, every comment, every message is a battle between, do they like me? And am I enough? And no matter how much validation comes, the hole never fills. Because validation doesn't heal insecurity, it feeds it. The more you chase it, the hungrier it gets. The more you try to control perception, the less you control yourself. In this world, being calm looks suspicious, being private looks arrogant, and being detached looks cold. But maybe detachment isn't coldness. Maybe it's healing. Maybe silence is not withdrawal, it's self-restoration. Modern psychology confirms what ancient philosophy already knew. You cannot control others without first losing yourself. And the price of constant control is authenticity, the quiet, unfiltered connection that once made us human. So the next time you catch yourself waiting for a reply, refreshing a post, or reading into someone's silence, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I really afraid of losing, them or the illusion of control? And when you know the answer, you'll see that the chains were never theirs to break. They were yours all along. Tell me in the comments, have you noticed how digital life shapes your emotions? Have you ever caught yourself playing emotional chess online without realizing it? Share your experience. I read every comment, and your voice might be the mirror someone else needs to wake up. Maybe the person you're trying to fix is controlling you. Maybe the one who seems fragile, anxious, or emotionally unstable has been quietly shaping your every move, not out of malice, but out of fear. But here is the twist that hurts more than any betrayal. What if you read that person? It's easy to spot control in others. It is much harder to see it in ourselves. The way we subtly guilt people for not caring enough. The way we rehearse our silence to make them notice. The way we call manipulation emotional honesty. We don't mean to do it. We're just afraid. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid of not mattering. Afraid of being truly seen and still not being loved. Carl Jung said that everything we hate in others is a reflection of what we refuse to face within ourselves. When you meet someone controlling, clingy, or manipulative, and it ignites something inside you, anger, disgust, frustration, that's your mirror. It's showing you the parts of your own shadow still waiting to be seen. Because deep down, every human being craves control over one thing: certainty. And when life refuses to give it, we find ways to take it, through relationships, through approval, through the illusion of power. But the truth is, control is never about others. It's always about our inability to sit in the chaos of our own emotions. When you say, "I just want peace," what you really mean is, "I want things to stop triggering the pain I can't face." And so, unconsciously, you begin to rearrange the world, making others behave a certain way, speak a certain way, love a certain way, so that you can avoid confronting what's alive inside you. That's the hidden cost of control. You might win the game, but you lose yourself in the process. Freedom doesn't begin when the world changes. It begins the moment you stop trying to change the world. It begins when you can sit in uncertainty without panic, when you can let others be as they are without taking it personally, when you can say, "I'm not here to be understood, I'm here to be real." It's terrifying, I know. Because the moment you let go of control, the mind whispers, what if no one stays? What if I lose everything? But that's the illusion. You don't lose love when you let go, you lose attachment. And in that loss, you find something much deeper. Peace that doesn't depend on obedience, worth that doesn't depend on being needed, and love that doesn't depend on control. Look closely at the patterns in your life. Do you over-explain yourself? Do you constantly scan people's moods to adjust your own? Do you feel uneasy when someone pulls away, even when you know it's not about you? That's your shadow speaking. The goal isn't to shame it, it's good to see it. Because awareness is what transforms shadow into light. When you notice your need to control, when you pause before the guilt trap text, before the silent treatment, before the self-pity, something miraculous happens. The unconscious becomes conscious, and what once ruled you now answers to you. It's not about becoming non-reactive or emotionless. It's about reclaiming your center. It's about realizing that you can witness pain without performing it, that you can express without manipulating, that you can love without possessing. Freedom begins the moment you no longer need to control how others see you. It's not a loud awakening, it's quiet, subtle, sacred. Like exhaling after years of holding your breath. And maybe, just maybe, this is what love was meant to feel like all along. Not a constant battle for reassurance, but a stillness where both people can simply exist without fear. That's the work Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, not perfect. It's when you stop chasing approval and start meeting the fragmented parts of your own soul. And in that meeting, control dissolves, because there's nothing left to hide. So the next time you feel that familiar urge to fix someone, to convince them, to hold on a little tighter, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me feels unsafe right now? Then listen, that voice inside doesn't need control. It needs compassion. Tell me in the comments, what part of this message resonated with you most? Have you ever caught yourself trying to control not out of power, but out of fear? Share your thoughts below. I read everyone, and your insight could be the light someone else has been waiting for. The insecure person controls others because they cannot control their fear. But when you stop feeding that fear, when you stop trying to manage how others feel, you finally meet the part of you that no longer needs control to feel safe. That meeting changes everything. For the first time, you stop chasing peace and start becoming it. You stop begging for understanding and begin to understand yourself. And you realize that what you were looking for in everyone else was never out there to begin with. Control was never the cure, it was the symptom. A defense against the unbearable truth that we are fragile, uncertain, and fleeting. But that fragility isn't weakness. It's what makes you human. When you stop running from it, life begins to soften. You start to notice the quiet beauty in imperfection. You start to let people be themselves, even when it hurts. You start to feel alive again, not because the world obeys you, but because you no longer need it to. And somewhere between the silence and the surrender, a new kind of strength emerges. Not the brittle strength of control, but the steady power of presence. It has the kind of strength that doesn't depend on being right or loved or validated. It's the kind that exists simply because you exist. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about finally accepting that love cannot grow in captivity. Every time you control, you shrink life to fit your fear. But when you release it, when you trust that whatever stays is meant to stay, and whatever leaves is meant to leave, you make space for truth to enter. That's where the healing begins. Not when you have power, but when you no longer crave it. Not when people finally understand you, but when you no longer need them to. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And maybe that's all we ever needed to hear. You don't have to be the victim. You don't have to be the controller. You can be something far more powerful, aware. Because awareness is liberation, and liberation doesn't shout. It whispers. It sounds like a quiet exhale, a single thought, I'm done controlling. I'm ready to live. So take a breath. Let the world spin without you for a moment. Watch how, somehow it keeps turning, and realize with relief that you were never meant to carry it alone. If this message resonated with you, take it as a sign. It's time to look within, not to fix, but to see. And if this spoke to your soul, I invite you to join me on this journey. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, not for me, but for you. Because every video on this channel is a mirror, a reminder to wake up, to question, to remember who you are beneath the noise. Leave a comment below and tell me, what truth did you see in yourself tonight? What part of you is ready to stop controlling and start healing? I read everyone. And maybe, just maybe, your story will help someone else finally breathe free too.